here with Game C, Sootn Vs Marncore in round 1 of the December Deadlock tournament. Welcome everybody. I'm Zayforex and I'm joined here by Marshall.
Hello there folks. And this is a really interesting lava map.
Yeah, looks like a dumbbell, 2 round circles at either end of a long little choke point area. Definitely still some metal to fight over in the middle. I mean, there's 5 mechs that are all right next to each other there. That's a nice little tasty spot to try and aggressively take.
Indeed.
All of that metal on the other side of the planet.
And players have spawned in. So, up on the north, you've got Sootn in orange. Going for a single vehicle start. On the south pole, however, you've got Marncore in blue, also going for a single vehicle with second air and a 1-2 start.
Yep, going to grab mechs before his second air, looking over at Sootn. He's going to be assisting his factory, getting those engineers out for now. And yes, he doesn't want to fill anything else in between time. Just going to keep assisting that factory, getting up the engineers as quickly as possible, and then moving on to an air factory, a little bit behind Marncore perhaps, but we'll see what happens. He has assisted those engineers out.
Yeah, I mean, so the engineers that you assist out, you can go and grab as much metal as you want really early on. But, I mean, when I played this game, what I did is I assisted one engineer out, and then I went and ran all the way up the little thin stretch there and started putting up factories to try and give myself a foothold. Because, of course, later on in the game, when you have got your land units, you're going to want as much ground on that sort of tug of war, effectively, it's what it's going to be, as you possibly can, so you can claim perhaps those mechs in the middle there. But, of course, the players mustn't neglect the mechs on the other side of the map.
Yeah, there is so much metal here, like a real huge amount. Like, if you compare it to the rest of the map, a lot of the metal is contained within these 3 islands.
Yeah.
If you can take one of those big islands, you can kind of put pelters there and disrupt them building 5 of those metal points. So it's very important to be getting in the air and getting over there and contesting it.
Really good work there from Marncore, managing to luck out and take out the Firefly Scout from Sootn, so he's going to be delayed on getting the Scout, and Marncore does actually manage to do that there. Fortunately, he did get shot down by the commander, but he saw what he needed to see.
He does get a little bit of information, and looking from Sootn's point of view, he sees absolutely nothing right now, so nice little bit of intel denial there early game.
Yeah, and even more interceptors coming out from Marncore, so definitely want to maintain the air superiority, as that is seemingly the meta. You want to try and get as much air units out as you possibly can.
Here we go, not moving on to anything else too extravagant right now. Marncore's just working on a little bit more power gens before he starts getting up more production, also getting up turrets and perhaps some walls planned after that. Yep, walls are planned after that, so he's really turtling off this area, and in fact if he walls this area off, he's basically not contesting the middle at all. You always want to put at least some sort of pressure on it so that they can't take it for themselves.
Yeah, playing extremely defensively here is not exactly what I might have recommended. I mean, what I did discuss actually the other day when playing this map for the first time is what you can do is you can run up the middle, and instead of putting a factory, you can wall in your opponent so they physically cannot get out, and you can absolutely hamper any of their expansion, especially if you maintain control of the other islands.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at that point you can hold on to it relatively easily, or at least force them to commit a whole load of forces to stop you. It gives you more time to contest these.
Good bombing raid in there. Taking down
so
a couple of fabricators.
Alright, yeah, bomber coming in. He took down took 2 fabricators down. Oh, that is painful.
Yeah, and they won't get
The
those
anti-air
mechs.
does eventually shoot him down though. But on the other side of the planet, Sootn now building his second mechs on one of these islands. Looks like he's not going to queue up any defences. Honestly, a vehicle factory or an anti-air factory would be one of the first things or an anti-air rather, would be one of the first things I get out here, because anti-air over these islands is going to be very useful when you're having air fights over there and you're trying to contest that airspace. And it looks like he's actually switching up and building an anti-air there now.
Yeah, that's good to see. Sorry.
I totally crashed, but you keep going.
That's right, so we've got a few land units now coming out from Sootn, moving down the choke in the middle there. So he's actually making a bit of ground, and of course because Marncore has walled himself in, his units are not moving out whatsoever. He does have a rather large air force though. He's got about 10 interceptors there with 1 bomber, so he'll be able to go for the expanding fabber yet again, and he's just about to do that. He'll see that, and the bomber will hopefully be rerouted, hopefully won't get taken out by the Stinger or the interceptors scramble to take him out. Unfortunately, he does manage to take down the fabricators, so still hampering the expansion from Sootn, which is really good. However, Sootn in its main base now getting up even more factories, so he's currently sitting at 4 vehicle factories and 2 air factories, while Marncore is going much more heavy on the air, 5 air factories to 1 vehicle factory. Rather contrasting builds here. Are you back in the game yet?
We're just loading into the planets now. What's the eco looking like, Marshall?
The eco is looking alright. Marncore currently stalling on metal and has just managed to go back into the positive and floating his power. Sootn staying in the green in both. So Marncore seems to be using his resources perhaps a little bit too much, but either way both of these players are doing alright. And Sootn on the other island there has managed to claim 6 mechs now, and he might even want to put up an air factory over there to further claim that. He's putting up another anti-air. It seems as though, however, Marncore has almost forgotten about those islands around the back. That is going to be a problem.
Oh, wow, I just crashed again. I'm going to turn off system sharing. It's the only mod that I've turned on recently. Here you go, Marshall. Sorry about this.
That's alright. There is a rather large, substantially large actually, an air force moving out. It's only got 1 bomber in it, but a ton of interceptors from Marncore, so this is going to go and raid an air fabber this time that does get sniped by a ton of interceptors there, and the bombing runs are now targeted at the metal points, so they're going to be lost. Marncore still has not scouted the mechs that Sootn has expanded over on the islands though, but he's just managed to get a good scout of the Sootn's main base there, and he's managed to see a load of fabricators and vehicle factories. Sootn still hasn't pushed into Marncore's base yet, so he hasn't. Well, he has managed to see that the wall exists with the 2 turrets behind it, so perhaps he doesn't want to necessarily push in. But something that I did when I was practicing on this map, just to see what it played like, is I put up, certainly if I had air control, which I did, I put up a teleporter in my base and at the back of the opponent's main island, and just started streaming units in. And by the point that they'd realised, I'd already put up 2 factories in the back of their base, which wasn't particularly pleasant for them. So that's possibly an idea that Sootn might want to use, but that does mean that he needs to get air superiority back from Marncore, who's currently got a ridiculous number of air units. You in the game yet?
Interesting. I am back in the game now, and Marncore does have a severe amount of air units right now, but he isn't actually contesting the left-hand area. The longer he waits, the more and more anti-air is going to go up here. And it's going to make it harder for him to actually ever contest it. Get some long-range T2 air. There's also a lot of ground anti-air in the mix for Sootn, which is going to make it difficult to actually get wins against the units here. Even putting up anti-air in his base now. So Sootn is just going hard on the anti-air and controlling it and making it difficult for Marncore to actually achieve anything here.
Yeah, Marncore's transitioning up into vehicle factories now, but I feel as though with that wall there, what Sootn really needs to do is start perhaps building some infernos, which will be able to tank a few hits and perhaps knock down some of those walls to allow his the rest of his vehicles to move in. And just there, putting up the vehicle factory at a sort of proxy location there is a really nice staging point, but it does need to actually make sure it gets up so that he can actually maintain that there.
Yep, he is a little bit vulnerable in the middle. He does have the anti-air ground there, but there's a lot of air units. They could start attacking these metal. And at the moment, really leading on metal is going to benefit Sootn a huge amount. We're going to see what happens though. The bombers are probably going to get shot pretty hard here.
They do take out
bombers. 3.
Wow.
Takes down 3, but fighters end up tanking quite a lot of that damage.
The vehicle's going to move in now, perhaps. Not most favourable confrontation for them. The Infernos of Marncore are soaking up a bit more damage though, and of course the spinners there are getting taken down because they cannot shoot at ground, so they're particularly useless against ground units, and they are now all gone from that, well, mostly all gone rather, from the front army there, and the bombers just going up as they've taken down that fabricator, and they're about to take out even more fabricators that are trying to move down, so that was a pretty good move there from Marncore.
Oh! Another engineer goes down, 1 left. Fighters coming in, but still outnumbered at the moment for Sootn. I think at this time, no matter how much anti-air you put up, you've got to get more air factories. You have to try and get as many fighters as they do, so you can actually contest the air with some fast dynamic units rather than just using ground anti-air defense.
And he also needs to get up perhaps a bit more AA around his commander. Even though there's the 2 air factories there, if you've got air superiority and a whole bunch of bombers swooping in, you could potentially get a bomber snipe on that commander while you desperately try and build anti-air, but if it's not already built, it's useless.
Yep, a decent weight of tanks now moving forwards for Marncore. Got quite a lot in the mix there. It's currently outnumbers Sootn. He could probably push a little bit harder, especially with his air support. But he's actually going to retreat now. A bit of a pity. He could be pushing harder. Looking at the army tab right now, 13 factories for Marncore and 11 for Sootn.
Yeah.
And Marncore almost double the mobile forces right now.
Sootn has now claimed all of the metal on the other islands. This is pretty big for him right now. All he needs to do now is keep building power and stock up on air factories, and he'll be able to fight Marncore back, because look at the metal income there, 254 to 120. That's astonishing for the size of map that's actually playable.
That's a pretty huge lead right now for Sootn, and Marncore, as time goes on, it's going to be harder and harder to contest this area, because he doesn't have as many air units now, and his bombers aren't going to do too great against those static AA, of which more are now being built by those air fabbers. Marncore now coming in at the main base. He's going to see this ground anti-air, and he's going to go straight for it with the bombers. Not quite finishing it off.
Perhaps not the best choice to go for the ground AA, because you will just sort of... It is easily rebuildable, especially considering it's in the middle of the base. Perhaps the economic damage would have been a better choice.
Still putting in a bit of work, trying to attack the outskirts of that base as these tanks roll through the middle, destroying those 5 mechs that have been built. So beginning to win it back a little bit for Marncore. But he has to win so much to overcome this big medal deficit right now, because he's lost those islands. And maybe, ideally, if he could actually get onto those islands and just start contesting one of them, that'd be a better use of his air advantage, because he's probably going to fall behind in air unless Sootn just doesn't keep getting more air factories out.
Yeah, Sootn needs more air factories, and he also needs more vehicle factories, because he has lost a little bit of ground on the middle there, as he's lost about 6 mechs, and potentially a 7th with this bombing run. But he does need the vehicle numbers to actually counter that, because look inside Marncore's base, he's gone up to T2 vehicles. This could be big. Has Sootn scouted that, looking from his point of view? He has not seen it.
Yeah, Sootn hasn't actually scouted the main base of Marncore right now. He doesn't even know what factories he started with. That is a pretty big disadvantage. Marncore a decent weight of bombers, putting in a lot of work on those tanks from Sootn. A bomber coming in for one attack on one of the few mechs that Sootn's ever actually seen of Marncore's. Whereas Marncore's just pressing through the main base. He's got Infernos there, and he's taking down one of the factories, and he can start pushing hard, because there isn't actually enough units from Sootn to defend right now.
Yeah.
He has more eco, but he hasn't been using any of it, whereas Marncore's stalling because he's trying to use more than he's currently got.
Yeah, and Sootn has now managed to scout the advanced vehicle factory there, and he's also sees the flak AA going up from Marncore as well. Really interesting choice there, because that does splash damage, I believe, for aircraft. So if he manages to get up enough of that and put his commander in the middle of it, a bomber snipe isn't going to be an option for Sootn.
Yeah, pretty interesting to be going for AA. I guess he's banking on at some point possibly losing a lot of his air units, wanting to make sure his commander's still safe in case there's a counter-attack. But right now, no ground anti-air mixed in with his vehicles. He doesn't really need it because he has air superiority right now, which means he can have a higher DPS on his groups of units that he starts sending forwards. Now coming into range of those factories again, engaging with a few units that are streaming in from Sootn. That's not a good confrontation for Sootn as these factories start to go down. Yeah,
Sootn is losing a little bit of ground here. He's failing to capitalise on his massive eco as he's floating both metal and energy there. He needs to build more factories inside his base. He's got enough power and his commander's idle, so he could build tons and tons of factories there with his commander. But he is putting up a few air factories on the islands. So looking at the aircraft numbers, they're reasonably comparable, actually, given the production that both players have. So I think air superiority is in the balance here. You know, it's not decisive either way as it was before, but I feel as though Marncore, perhaps with his unfavourable bombing runs, has sort of thrown it away a little bit.
I think actually it's 5 factories to 6 in favour of Marncore, so not by much. There's a 6th one being built, as you say, on those islands. So he can start winning up, because he's only going to be going for fighter production most likely, just to try and regain air control. He won't be having any bombers, which means he might outnumber Marncore a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's definitely going to get back in the game in terms of that sort of production. But Marncore has to keep pushing. There isn't really enough to stop him, and he hasn't been pushing hard enough. and now beginning to break through. He just wants to take care of these factories, reduce the air production, and start coming in right at the main base, because at the moment he has enough units to do it, and if Sootn just keeps building more production, he's going to start getting more and more ahead. We do see he started T2 in his base, just a single engineer on that. It will take a little while to do though.
Yeah, and it is way away from his base. He has got the AA there, though, so hopefully bombing runs might not be so effectual, especially given the lack of intercept of bullet sponge, if you will. However, inside Marncore's base, something that's going to be even more problematic for Sootn is the production of things like shellers and advanced metal. So Marncore's going to be able to close that metal deficit without having to move on to the islands, because he's got to the advanced tier earlier on. So Sootn did a good job scouting that, but he really now needs to do something about it and up his game a little bit, especially his production, because his commander is still idle.
First bomber coming out from Sootn. It does a decent bit of work, getting a couple of runs here on these units. Air units eventually coming from Marncore to take care of them. Marncore's reinforcements arrive. Inferno's actually getting close to these factories, which will take them down nice and quick. And reinforcements arriving from Marncore allow him to keep pushing forward, beginning to group up units for Sootn in the main base. Trying to group them up rather than sending them in one by one and losing them. He's also getting up more production with his factories. Looking at the army tab, he's just overtaken him, sitting 15 to 4 factories in favour of Sootn. Air factories now being rebuilt on those islands so he can get his air production back up, but units from Marncore are now heading straight in down the middle lane.
Yeah, and Sootn really sort of moving in a little bit too early, I think, especially with the Infernos there, because they're all getting single-filed, effectively, between the lava and that factory, so he's just losing his units, whereas he really wants to be walling in, being on the defensive rather than the offensive, because Marncore has got substantially more ground units than Sootn at this point in the game.
2 bombers really putting in work for Sootn, third one on the way as well, and there aren't really fighters to stop it from Marncore. There are some in his base, he needs to send them in, but the bomber's just absolutely taking pot shots at his units, forcing him to retreat, even though he's losing all of these units as well. So that one attack that he could have kept pushing with can't really push anymore, and not that many ground units now streaming in to help give some support, but fighters are going to come in and see what work they can do. Pretty even numbers between the fighters, probably going to see a loss from Marncore, and he gets crushed. He does fight under his own anti-air though, which ends up getting him an extra 3 or 4 kills right at the end, which works very nicely for him. And he can get back in it now that he has anti-air in the mix. If we have a look over at his T2, he's had a good start on the T2, getting up flak just to be super protective against air, and started T2 power gens and T2 mechs. So he can start catching up now, as he only trails 180 to 219. So only down by about 37 metal there. That's not much.
Yeah, that's closing the gap substantially, and the power as well as closing the gap as well. The few vehicle factories were idle from Sootn until only very recently, so it's good to see that those have started production and producing units there, because before they were laying idle and just wasted investments from Sootn. So it's good to see that he actually has a ground force now, which can rival Marncore's. Perhaps what he could do is perhaps build a bot factory here or there to be able to rush in and take out the shellers while the vehicles soak up their hits, perchance. But
units from Sootn coming down the main, and it looks like they're forced to retreat. They can do a little bit of raiding on those mechs.
I was just going to say there that Marncore pushing up with walls, so this is interesting that he's just sort of gradually creeping up, minimising the amount of space Sootn has. I think Marncore perhaps could have pushed up a little bit further than that in that one. I think he's being a little bit too conservative in
I think at the time he started building, he was in a little bit of trouble. He wanted something to hide behind. I think it was a good placement. But now I think, as you say, just move forward, start building walls a little bit closer forwards, give yourself the advantage. Right now he has the T2 units in the mix. He's got shellers, which are nice and long range, been getting a couple of wins already. Hiding behind the walls is definitely going to help them, and in come those shots. If they get in nicely among the AoE, can destroy at least 4 or 5 units in one go. And he also has a lot of anti-air in the mix on the ground now, so he's a lot more secure and diverse in his units there. In fact, I think he's building the wall a little bit too far. You want to be able to let your units get through, but still hide behind for extra cover. And now his units have nowhere to go. He's getting hit by bombers. Now he's in a direct confrontation. He could have retreated behind his walls, but unfortunately, he's blocked himself out.
Yeah, he's going to lose a couple of shellers there unfavorably.
Yeah.
He does still have one.
Really.
We did see Marncore has now scouted the 2-2 vehicle factory of Sootn. He sent a whole bunch of interceptors up. He did lose a few because they overshot the AA there, but he has seen that the factory is up, so he's going to try and want to respond to that. And on the other side of the base as well, the idle air factories there, they could be producing stuff, which is Really good
Yeah,
idea
lots
for
of
them to
idle
do that.
stuff for Sootn. Really needs to work on that. His eco is building up a little bit, sitting on 240 compared to 190 from Marncore. So a lead of 50. He's getting out T2 engineers, plunging everything at the moment into it. He can start building up his eco. He's a little bit behind in tech.
It's important to
Marncore needs
note.
to.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that Marncore still has not scouted these islands. He does not know that Sootn has colonised on them. And seeing this air factory placement there, that could be a really big bit of intel that Marncore needs to find. Because otherwise he's going to wonder where all the air units are coming from.
Yeah, I'm increasingly beginning to think Marncore has completely neglected to notice the other side of the map. I reckon he's only been looking at this choke point and hasn't really noticed. Because he hasn't even scouted since the beginning that he actually built there. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't actually know it was there. Failed bombing run in the middle. Marncore looks like he's broken his walls down. Now he's going to rebuild them so he can cover his turrets. The units are coming in. Blocks him just about in time.
One Faber does get taken down, but the tanks are managing to overshoot the walls and taking down 2 turrets there. And Sheller's moving in from Marncore as well, just doing a little bit of their work. But Inferno's doing really good work there on chewing down those walls. Unfortunately, the choke is still really small.
Oh no, look at their Sheller shells. Oh
wow.
their shells undershooting a little bit. But I think it's okay. They've still got the wall cover and they can now send in and crush them all pretty easily. And can now make a counter-attack. Very interesting though, we're seeing the T2 units now coming in from Sootn as well. Marncore slightly overtaking in terms of metal right now because he's been working his T2 metal pretty hard. But Sootn is still absolutely in the game right now.
Ooh, wow. I fear for
starts on
Sootn.
T2.
He could get a bomber snipe on himself there from Marncore. He seems to be stocking up bombers and interceptors for something with comparable air forces now. And looking at Sootn's commander, it's pretty open. I mean, there's only 2 bits of AA there.
Sootn is sitting on 22 factories to Marncore's 14 right now. He's really starting to plunge with his eco and finally use it all. His efficiency on 50% because he's really assisting this engineer trying to get out T2 metal. I think he needs to work on T2 power really to get that back on track.
Yeah, or perhaps even get up some flak just to be safe as well. I'm not sure he's seen the air forces of Marncore.
Some painful Sheller shots coming in from that one Sheller from Sootn, destroying a lot of the anti-air that Marncore actually had in that group. And Sheller now still putting in more work. And a little bit of a Sheller battle. 7 now for Marncore. That's a lot of fire to come in. Of course, against moving units, they often miss. See them missing a lot of their shots now. But at range, they can do pretty amazing. There's so many of them now. There's a lot of damage and a lot of AoE coming down. All of those tanks getting vaporized by all of the incoming shots here. Before they even get close, they've lost most of their units, and Sootn has a very unfavorable confrontation as he runs into Sheller fire.
Yeah, that was really unfavourable. What I would have suggested is perhaps moving his units back and consolidating his forces with these ones here that were stuck on the factory wreckage, because if he'd combined those 2 blobs, he would have had a number advantage, which might have enabled him to push through those walls that he so desperately needs to do.
We do see Sootn actually going for orbital here. He's also got up an orbital radar, so doing a great job of overtaking in the tech front now. Marncore, however, leading on metal. He does have less metal available to him, so eventually he's going to cap all of his metal and have no more than he can build. He's only got 2 more mechs which haven't been capped. And with orbital now going up for Sootn, he's taking a bit of advantage in the tech race. That's finished, going straight for an Archid. That's going to give him some excellent orbital intel as he can move that in, and he knows that there's no deep space radar, no orbital units as yet from Marncore.
I'm just seeing the Air Force moving in from Sootn. He could get the scout on the massive amount of flak there and the massive Air Force, but he didn't see that grouping of bombers. That is definitely a commander snipe waiting to happen. Meanwhile, on the other side of Marncore's base, though, Sootn, with some sneaky tactics here, putting up a pelter. However, there's a distinct lack of anti-air over there, so if that's found,
there it is.
which it is, it's going to get taken down instantly, and air fabbers, of course, not exactly your favourite. And Marncore now realising, oh wait, there's the other side of a sphere that I haven't looked at, and perhaps realising that he has neglected it. But I think at this
see
point,
that first bit of scouting then? Is that what he's just done?
yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, he has. He sees these air factories, he sees all these mechs, he now realises there's a whole load of metal on the other half of the map, and that's why he's finding it so difficult.
But he's also scouted the commander there as well and seen that it's relatively open, and we do see the bombers mobilising there inside Marncore's base with all of the interceptors as well. This could be the bomber snipe that we've been waiting for, especially given the commander is really quite open with a distinct lack of flak around him, and those bombers will only need one pass, I suspect, as the interceptors go in first just to make sure, as a sort of vanguard if you will, soaking up the damage from any defences. So,
now, of course, we don't prioritise bombers in this patch. That's in the PTE right now, so there's not much of an easy way to stop these bombers. I think there's about 30. I think there's just about enough for one strike. It's going to be pretty close either way. In come the bombers coming in for their attack. Down they drop their load. Oh, a lot's going down on the commander. Commander already down to 17%. They're going to come in for a second strike. The fighters aren't there to stop them in time. And a successful snipe. Second strike ends up dealing enough damage to finish him off, and Sootn just wasn't there in time.
Yeah. I feel as though Sootn lost that because he didn't capitalise on the eco he had early enough. And,
he had a huge amount of eco and we never saw him stall. So it didn't matter that he had more eco than Marncore because he wasn't actually using it.
Yeah, and Marncore as well with those incredible walls there. I think that really helped him on the defensive side because so many pushes from Sootn were denied by walls and sheller combinations. So, good play by Marncore, a little bit biding his time, but I think playing perhaps slightly risky there by not scouting the other side of the map. But, good game.
Indeed.